New details about charges against former President Donald Trump.
This allegation of requesting the security footage be deleted helps the entire obstruction of justice case that the government has brought.
Special counsel Jack Smith accusing the former president of attempting to have security camera footage deleted after a federal grand jury had issued a subpoena in order to see it. Plus,
I think post-pandemic and with the addition of payment screens and seeing inflated tip suggestions, people are really uncertain about what to do out there.
the confusion at the cash register as more services add the option to leave a tip. Many customers are wondering when they should pay and how much. And
if I had to boil it down, I would say that people who shared somewhat meaningfully in the piece of the pie, they got a piece of the pie when shows were successful or when films were successful. That has gone away for many people, and that's what the strike is about.
postponed. The SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild strikes delay the Emmys. I speak with a Vanity Fair contributing editor questioning, has the industry reached its breaking point? Good evening, everyone. I'm Kana Whitworth in for Lindsay Davis tonight, and thank you so much for streaming with us. We're following those stories and so much more, including the truck driver attacked by a canine officer while surrendering. He says he feared he was going to die, and tonight he shares his thoughts on the officer who unleashed the dog losing his job. Plus, the charges against the woman accused of faking her own kidnapping and taking care of your skin in this extreme heat. How to make sure that your sunscreen is protecting you. Our correspondents are fanned out across the country covering those stories and much more for us tonight. But of course, we do begin with the new details emerging about the additional charges against former President Trump and his employees in the classified documents case. What the latest indictment reveals about Trump's efforts to destroy possibly incriminating security tapes and what we're learning about that classified document he allegedly showed at Bedminster. It has the former president lashing out, accusing the special counsel of harassment and insisting, quote, "These are my tapes." Meanwhile, in Iowa tonight, candidate Trump sharing the stage with GOP presidential rival Ron DeSantis. Trump's legal battles and a feud with Iowa's Republican governor under the spotlight tonight. Our Rachel Scott is on the trail tonight. But first, we go to ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas with what we're learning from that superseding indictment.
Tonight, these serious and damning new charges against former President Donald Trump, all stemming from what FBI agents saw when they were in Mar-a-Lago to recover classified documents in June of last year, when they noticed surveillance cameras outside the storage room, and they knew they wanted that video. The Justice Department team alerting Trump a subpoena was coming. They wanted to know what the footage would show. But within 24 hours of being warned, they say Trump got on the phone and called the property manager at Mar-a-Lago, Carlos de Oliveira, who then spoke with Trump for about 24 minutes. It was the very next day the official subpoena from the grand jury is issued. And then yet another phone call from Donald Trump, this time to Trump's aide, Walt Nauta. Investigators say after that phone call, Nauta changed his travel plans. Instead of accompanying Trump to Illinois, he flew to Florida instead, a trip Nauta apparently wanted to remain secret. 24 hours later, Nauta is on site at Mar-a-Lago with that property manager, Carlos de Oliveira, searching for those cameras. According to the indictment, they, quote, walked with a flashlight through the tunnel where the storage room was located and observed and pointed out surveillance cameras. Then Jack Smith in his indictment spells out a dramatic private conversation between that property manager, de Oliveira, and now another employee, who they call Trump employee number 4, who was Mar-a-Lago's IT director, in a small closet at the club. De Oliveira asking how long the footage is retained. The IT director says approximately 45 days. Then de Oliveira telling that employee, quote, that the boss wanted the server deleted. But employee number 4, the IT director, pushes back, saying he would not know how to do that, and that he did not believe he would have the rights to do that, suggesting that de Oliveira try his supervisor. But de Oliveira then insisting again. The boss wanted the server deleted and asking, what are we going to do? The alleged conspiracy between Donald Trump, his aide, Walt Nauta, and the Mar-a-Lago property manager, Carlos de Oliveira, to destroy the footage and keep it from investigators failed. The next month, the FBI obtained and reviewed surveillance video from the Mar-a-Lago club showing the movement of boxes. A few weeks later, Donald Trump calls De Oliveira and tells De Oliveira that he would get him an attorney. Legal observers say this new evidence is damning.
This allegation of requesting the security footage be deleted helps the entire obstruction of justice case that the government has brought, because they have to show it was intentional. He was doing it on purpose. And it's hard to figure out why anyone would be deleting security footage for any reason other than to hide what was on it.
Trump and Nada have already pleaded not guilty to previous charges. And tonight, Trump now saying after these new charges, he didn't have to turn over the surveillance. And Trump was asked what happens to the race for the White House if he's convicted.
If, going forward, right, you get these indictments, there ends up, you got a jury in D.C., you get convicted and sentenced. Does that stop your campaign for president if you're sentenced?
Not at all. There's nothing in the Constitution to say that it could, and not at all.
Okay, and Pierre Thomas is joining me now. Pierre, this new superseding indictment, it's not just the new charges of obstruction, but there's also another charge related to the classified documents. We thought that was over. It's certainly not. Explain that to us.
Katie, remember that classified document about attacking Iran that Trump was allegedly waving around at Westminster? The special counsel now says they have found that document, a document so top secret it can't be shared even with our allies. Trump now charged with illegally retaining that document as well. And Kana, tonight, Trump is on his way to Iowa to campaign.
Stunning. Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you. Let's turn now to Rachel Scott, who is on the campaign trail in Des Moines, Iowa tonight, where Republican presidential candidates are gathering this weekend. Rachel, the former president, is a clear front runner, but can you break it down for us how these indictments could impact him on the campaign trail or him staying in the race if he's convicted?
Well, this is certainly going to be a challenge for former President Donald Trump because he will have to balance court appearances with campaign events and hearings. Now, if he is convicted, there is nothing that prevents him from running or even going on to serve as the next president of the United States, even with a criminal record. But Donald Trump right now is still maintaining his firm lead. He's ahead by roughly 30 points ahead of this very crowded field. In fact, that number has only grown larger since the very first indictment, Kana.
Right, and we know Trump says he will still run if convicted. And Rachel, if he was elected again, what could that mean for these investigations?
Yeah, well, it could mean a lot for the federal investigations because former President Donald Trump says that he would like to fire the special counsel, Jack Smith. Now, he can't do that directly, but what Trump could do if he does win the election in 2024 is appoint a new attorney general that would be able to carry out that very demand of firing the special counsel and ending this investigation entirely. And I'm told tonight, Kana, that is a very clear priority for the former president.
All right, Rachel, as always, our thanks to you. Also tonight, a truck driver who was attacked by a canine officer after leading police on a chase is opening up about the horrifying experience tonight. He says it happened while he was surrendering to authorities. At one point, an officer even pointed his rifle at him, and he says he feared for his life. ABC's Alex Perez has the body camera video and a warning for you tonight. It is disturbing.
Tonight, the truck driver who was attacked by a police dog while he tried to surrender to Ohio State troopers is breaking his silence.
I was saying I just didn't want to die. That what was going through my mind. I just didn't want to die.
23-year-old Jadarius Rose, who was on the phone with his mother, says he didn't know why troopers were following him. They say it was because his commercial truck was missing a mud flap.
I told him to pull over. When he looked out and saw that they had jumped out their vehicles with their rifles cocked at him, he pulled out. Get out of the truck!
Rose then calling 911.
I'm trying to figure out why they got their guns pulled out at me, and I'm just a truck driver.
State police finally using spike strips to stop the truck. Moments later, Rose was outside with his hands up when a trooper is heard repeatedly warning a local officer not to use the dog.
Do not release the dog with his hands up.
Ryan Speakman appears to signal for the dog to attack. A review board found the officer followed proper policy for canines, but the police department firing him anyway, saying he did not meet the standards and expectations we hold for our police officers.
You just let the dog bite me. They didn't try to get the dog off of me. I asked the dog, please stop. It hurts. And it finally let go.
And Alex Perez is joining us now. So, Alex, where do things stand here as far as charges and also the employment of this officer?
Well, Kana, Rose is still charged with one felony count of failure to comply. The union representing the officer is challenging his firing, saying he was wrongfully terminated. Kana?
All right, Alex, thank you. In Colorado, a police officer on trial for placing a handcuffed woman in a patrol car that had been parked on train tracks that then was later struck by a freight train was found guilty of reckless endangerment and assault. And another warning for you again, this video also disturbing. Officer Jordan Steinke was acquitted of manslaughter for the incident. This happened last September. It left the suspect seriously injured. The judge presiding over the case said the court did not prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the officer knowingly intended to harm the woman she was apprehending. Following the latest ruling, Steinke's sentencing hearing is scheduled for this fall. The other officer who actually parked the car on the tracks is also facing charges. And now to the new charges against the Alabama woman who confessed to faking her own abduction and what authorities are saying tonight about their frustration over the panic they say she caused. Here's ABC's Elwyn Lopez.
Tonight, Carly Russell, the 25-year-old Alabama nursing student who confessed to faking her own abduction, now facing charges.
Her decisions that night created panic and alarm for the citizens of our city and even across the nation as the concern grew that a kidnapper was on the loose using a small child as bait.
Russell calling 911 from her car the night of July 13th.
I am on Interstate 459 and there is a kid just walking by themselves.
Do you mind staying and keeping an eye on them until we get there?
Yeah, okay. Sure, yeah.
But disappearing by the time police arrived. Police and volunteers handing out flyers searching the area. 49 hours later, Russell returning home, first claiming she was kidnapped and escaped, but ultimately admitting that she had made the whole thing up. The police chief reading a statement from Russell's attorney.
There was no kidnapping. My client did not see a baby on the side of the road. My client apologizes for her actions to this community.
And Kana, Russell has been charged with 2 misdemeanor counts for falsifying statements. Authorities say they spent countless hours searching for her. The police chief there expressed his disappointment that the law did not allow for any additional charges. Now, if convicted, she could face up to 2 years in prison. Kana.
All right, Elwyn, thank you. Also tonight, as LeBron James' son, Bronny, continues to recover tonight, we hear the urgent yet calm call to 911 asking for immediate help. ABC's Matt Gutman has details.
Tonight, that urgent 911 call, moments after Bronny James suffered a sudden cardiac arrest during a basketball practice at USC.
So listen to me, okay, your ambulance here now. Okay, all right, sir. All right, sir, I'm going to send help there.
The LA Fire Department releasing redacted audio of the emergency call, which came in just before 9:30 a.m. local time on Monday.
Don't hang up, sir. Don't hang up. Okay, let's get next to him, please. Okay, how old is he?
The caller indicating no doctor was present when the 18-year-old James, set to begin his college career this fall, collapsed.
Is there a doctor on scene with them or a registered nurse?
No, there's no doctor.
Help is already on the way, okay? Fire department, paramedics already on the way, okay?
Yeah, okay.
In a statement, Cedars-Sinai Hospital crediting James' successful treatment with the swift and effective response by USC Athletics medical staff, adding that James arrived at the hospital neurologically intact and stable.
Kana, doctors say it's too early for a prognosis on Bronny's recovery, but it is worth noting that multiple other athletes have come back from cardiac arrest to play at an elite level, including, of course, Damar Hamlin of the Buffalo Bills. Kana.
All right, Matt Gutman, our thanks to you. Also tonight, leaders of a coup in Niger declared a general the new head of state after saying they had ousted President Bazoum in a 7th military takeover in West and Central Africa in less than 3 years. Now, this upheaval has raised concerns about the security of a region where Niger has been a key ally of Western powers seeking to contain insurgencies by groups that are linked to al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. The general appeared on state television with a banner on the screen that described him as the president of a newly formed military body named the National Council for Safeguarding the Homeland. And also tonight, July is on track to be the Earth's hottest month ever recorded, but there does appear to be a break coming. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is joining us now more with this timing. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Kana. Well, there'll be a break at least for some of us. Another hot day here in the Northeast and another day of storms up and over that heat ridge. And we had some damaging storms across Kentucky and West Virginia today. And some of that energy is getting into our nation's capital. Right about now, there's a very strong to severe thunderstorm just north of town. And they're on the watch here for the next couple of hours. Flood watch just issued for Detroit and northern Ohio for a cluster of storms now heading through Minneapolis that really, as you'll see in the future radar, is going to explode overnight. So Chicago, I think you go to bed early, boy, you're going to be woken up by storms. Same for maybe Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati early in the morning. And then that energy with potentially damaging winds does get into the Northeast right around peak heating. So that means we'll see storms from Roanoke to D.C. to Philly to Boston. We could see some damaging winds there. The heat, as I mentioned, will be another one tomorrow here in the Northeast and across the southern tier. But look at Chicago, 78. Some of that cooling will get and cool off the Northeast, but not before we get more storms tomorrow. Kana?
All right, Rob, our thanks to you. As actors and writers strike for better pay, the 75th Emmy Awards have now been postponed. That's according to the Associated Press. The ceremony was originally scheduled for September 18th. Emmy organizers have not set a new date. It could be pushed back until January, with hopes of both strikes being resolved by then. Later on in this program, we will be talking to veteran journalist and Vanity Fair contributor Mo Ryan on how Hollywood has reached this point. We have a lot more to get to here on Prime. A great white warning, if you will, the popular summer vacation destination that's become one of the largest hotspots for the underwater predators. But next, the confusion at the cash register as more services add the option to leave a tip. Many customers are wondering when they should pay and how much.
You want to feel good about the money that you're putting out into your community. And when it doesn't feel good, when it feels awkward, I think that's really, really hard for people to deal with.
Whenever news breaks,
the crush of families here in Poland.
Here in Kentucky, no match for the tornado.
From Monterey Park, California, on the ground in Ukraine.
Reporting from Uvalde, Texas.
ABC News Live is right there everywhere.
From the scene of that deadly missile strike in Dnipro, Ukraine.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey.
From Charleston, South Carolina, on the 2024 campaign trail.
From Kathmandu, Nepal.
In Truckee, California, covering record snowfall.
Traveling with the president in Mexico City.
Wherever the story.
Here at this airport in Tampa, it's already shut down.
Reporting from the nurses on the picket line.
Reporting from Jerusalem.
Here at 10 Downing Street in London.
Streaming live to you.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is.
Wherever the story is. We're going to take you there.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live.
ABC News Live. Streaming free everywhere. America's #1 streaming news.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about, the new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
A real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Can I hug you?
Yes.
So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 2 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
All right, tell me, how often does this happen to you? That big question, to tip or not to tip? Yeah, it is the big question yet again. These tipping options are popping up everywhere, and now customers are facing this screen. It prompts you to leave $1, maybe even $5 for something like coffee or goods and other services that didn't ask for gratuity in the past. This is something that has revved up in our post-pandemic world. So what do you do? Our Trevor Ault has a look at both sides of this debate.
It's lunchtime in New York City, and as hungry patrons take their salads, grain bowls, and smoothies to go, we wanted to know, did you tip for that?
I didn't tip, though.
No?
No, I didn't tip.
Did you have the option on the screen? Sometimes it's like a...
Yeah, I did have the option. I mean, everything's super expensive these days. I only tip when there's restaurant service, really, or taxis.
The thing they do now is they turn the screen towards you, so you kind of feel compelled to give something.
Right.
Even though it's takeaway, so you haven't...
Did you tip them?
We did. Well, we always do.
It's very weird because we don't pay any tips in Korea and Asia or even Europe. But in the United States, especially New York, it's so high. It's almost 20 is normal.
Tipping is an American tradition, and it's getting a renewed level of attention and scrutiny as prices go up and more services outside of traditional restaurants are asking their customers if they'd like to toss in a few bucks extra. Some people are starting to feel what's been labeled as tipping fatigue.
I think post-pandemic and with the addition of payment screens and seeing inflated tip suggestions, people are really uncertain about what to do out there.
Lizzie Post is the great-great-granddaughter of famed advice columnist Emily Post. Her family just published the 100th anniversary edition of their etiquette advice guide, but even after 100 years, she says the questions of when to tip and how much have never been easy to answer.
Even back then, tipping was a really difficult system, that it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
That is something that I feel like I hear from a lot of people, which is, I always tip because I feel like I should, but I don't always feel like I should.
They hear the voices of the workers who get tipped and appreciate the system as it is, and yet they find frustration with it in their own experience. And that's just not a fun balance, because you want to feel good about the money that you're putting out into your community. And when it doesn't feel good, when it feels awkward, I think that's really, really hard for people to deal with.
Part of that awkwardness may come when presented with this: a touchscreen at the end of your purchase asking how much you'll tip, suggesting 15, 20%, or sometimes even more, with the worker often standing right in front of you as you decide. Square is a leader in these point-of-sales devices. They tell us when the pandemic started, tipping became more commonplace to support workers during those takeout orders. And that mentality appears to have stuck. Americans are tipping more than they used to at sit-down restaurants and at quick-service businesses, too.
One of the things we're seeing is that businesses are increasingly starting to diversify their revenue streams. The key example here is something like the coffee shop in my neighborhood that turns into a bar at night. Coffee shops being an industry that don't particularly rely on tips a lot, and bars being one that very much does. In our data, that would show up as a seller that is now seeing more tips.
We went to Whitman's in Manhattan. It's a classic burger joint with table service, the bar, and they also use the Square payment system.
It's kind of awkward as a server to stand there and kind of like not try to look at what they're going to tip, because you don't want them to feel like I know, like, yeah, so it's just like people definitely tip more.
Owner Larry Kramer says based on his years of restaurant experience, he believes the current system of tipping works best for everyone.
What happens is some person might tip 30%. Some person might tip 18%. So the server makes a lot more by getting tips.
Interesting.
So really, it also motivates the server to do well. It's their responsible for their customer. The customer feels that and they tip out.
And you think actually if you did away with the tipping, your servers would make less money?
Yes.
Do you know a lot of other restaurateurs?
Yes, I do.
Do they generally feel the same way that you do about the tipping structure?
I think it's pretty much a consensus now in the industry, and that's why these QSRs are adding tips to their business. Before, you wouldn't have it at a Sweetgreen or a Dig or a coffee shop, but they're adding a tipping mechanism as well because it helps pay for the employees.
While minimum wage varies from state to state, federal law says businesses can pay tipped employees as little as $2.13 an hour. And there are calls to end tipping culture, requiring businesses to pick up the full tab for their employees' pay. But many in the restaurant industry who rely on tips, including at Whitman's, think that would actually work against them.
Would you vote to switch for the set salary, or would you keep it the way it is now?
I'd keep it the way it is.
Why?
The good weeks can be really, really good, and even the bad weeks, I think, are still enough.
There are several restaurants trying out a different approach. Dirt Candy serves a vegetarian menu, and tipping is not an option. Instead, the pay for their workers like Jay Shelley starts at $28 an hour.
Everyone who's sitting down, they know that we're not a tipping establishment, and it like lightens it a little bit. I will take the less money in a situation where I feel like the environment, it's a little bit less stressful.
Still, Jay Shelley does have a second job that does accept tips.
I also like the option at the Wesley where I'm making tips because it is more unpredictable, and that can sometimes be very fun.
But the tipping questions extend beyond food service. Take ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft. Sometimes riders have no idea what's expected of them, and the drivers can tell.
You don't know what they're thinking back there. You don't know if they're quietly going, gosh, this guy can't drive. Did I play the wrong band? Did I not get on the highway correctly?
St. Louis resident Dan Buffa started as an Uber driver just as the company implemented tipping. Uber now displays tipping options more prominently in the app, and Dan says he's noticed the difference.
The real chunk of where you made your money is tipping. Tipping can take it from an okay night to a very, very good night.
He says if the driver got you home safely after a night out, that is worth a few extra bucks to say thank you. The same could be said for cab drivers, something Professor Kwabena Donkor knows quite well. He paid for graduate school working as an NYC cab driver, and now he studies tipping.
Given that I'm from Ghana, I found tipping to be quite peculiar. And to top it up, even during my uncomfortable or negative interactions with passengers, that didn't seem to have much of an effect on whether I was tipped or the amount which I was tipped at.
Professor Donkor says the origins of tipping here are somewhat murky, perhaps starting with wealthy Americans in the mid-1800s.
If you do know that aristocrats are the ones who tip and you wanted to, improve your status in the eyes of people, you would engage in this particular act. And so once you have a critical mass of people who are actually engaging in this particular act, it becomes mainstream and everybody wants to seem quote unquote cool.
Some point to it taking further hold after the Civil War, with one railroad company using tipping as a way to avoid paying a livable wage to newly freed slaves.
Where you have the transition of freed blacks into the workforce. And that transition wasn't smooth.
And as tipping has made its way further into the culture, the motivation behind it appears to have changed.
85% of people say they tip because it's a social norm, but then you have only about 15% of people who say, well, look, I tip because I am worried about getting terrible future services if I don't do so.
Regardless of why we tip, the practice doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
The point of tipping, the word gratuity has the word gratitude in it, and that might be something that helps us get back to figuring out where a good middle ground with tipping is, I feel like.
All right, our thanks to Trevor Alt for that. And still ahead here, a pilot accused of showing up to work intoxicated, what officials are revealing about his alleged alcohol levels at the time. And Taylor Swift's powerful performances could have an impact on the environment, why scientists are weighing in on one of her concerts. And the Threads app started with some very high hopes, but is it still living up to those expectations? We take a look by the numbers.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
This is ABC News Live.
The crush of families here in Poland.
At refugee centers.
In Putin's Russia.
On the ground in Ukraine.
Close to the front line.
From the capital.
Destructive Cat 4 storm.
Here along
I-5. Boston is in the bullseye.
Let's go.
ABC News Live, America's #1 streaming news. Anytime, anywhere. Streaming 24/7 straight to you for free.
Thank you for making ABC News Live America's #1 streaming news.
From America's #1 news comes the all-new ABC News app. Breaking news, incredible video, faster, smarter, and customizable to your interests. If you love being in the know, you're gonna love this. Experience the all-new ABC News app. Download it now.
I came out of jail with a plan. I was gonna put every piece of energy I had into music.
Give it up for Jelly Roll!
If I wasn't a musician, I'd be dead. This was my best bet to really have an impact. I'll cry with you. Who'd have thought I could help people? I needed help, you know, I still need help.
Somebody save me. I love you.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on.
Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about, the new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
A real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
It was the ideal marriage. Little did I know I was married to a man who had done something so horrible that it would devastate our lives forever.
Teacher of the Year is now charged with sex crimes.
Only on Hulu.
He was living a double life.
The shocking story behind a #1 true crime podcast.
Prostitutes, escorts. He even cheated on me the week of our wedding.
Betrayal, the perfect husband.
He had a lot of fantasies.
Now streaming only on Hulu.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kana Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
This is where the newsmakers come first in the morning to be heard. America's #1 morning show.
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000. Yeah. Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
Wherever the story, ABC's Good Morning America is right there.
Reporting from the earthquake in Turkey, I'm David Muir. Wherever the story, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back. When Meta, the parent company of Google and Instagram, launched Threads, CEO Mark Zuckerberg touted the social media app as the Twitter killer. So, we're nearly 1 month in. How deadly is it? We'll take a look by the numbers. Threads hit the scene with a bang, racking up 100 million downloads in its first week. But Reuters reports that in an employee town hall yesterday, Zuckerberg confessed that more than half of those users have dumped the app. The New York Times tracked 15 of the most followed celebrities on X, as Twitter is now called, to see how they took to the new platform. So here are some of their findings. Wiz Khalifa was the biggest Threads user. He averaged 38 posts a day for Threads' first 2 weeks compared to 5 posts a day on X. But after that, his Threads enthusiasm dwindled. He's now averaging about 10 similar posts a day on both X and Threads. Demi Lovato also started out strong with 6 posts on Threads and only 1 on X in the first week. And this week, she has 2 million followers on Threads, compared to 53 million on X. And Ellen DeGeneres, who stopped using Elon Musk's X last April, was among the first 3,000 people to download the app, posting, welcome to gay Twitter on opening day. She followed up with 6 posts in the first week, but she's only posted once this week. Also this week, Mark Zuckerberg assured investors that Threads has exceeded the company's expectations and that they are working on improvements. Well, we still have a lot more to get to here tonight on Prime, diving into the culture of Hollywood and the role power has played in some of its lowest moments. Best-selling author Maureen Ryan talks to us about the revelations in her new bombshell book. Also, how would you like to eat free subs for life? The big change that Subway is asking people to make if they want that perk.
What does it take to be America's #1 news? It takes asking the straightforward, tough questions.
Do you believe that Donald Trump should ever be president again?
How would your mom feel about your relationship with your brother now?
I can't imagine what it feels like to go from $20 billion to $100,000.
Yeah.
Are you worried about going to jail?
You write that you had low-grade depression. How'd you get out of that?
The news-making interviews.
You said that there were 6 friends. One of them was sick.
Yeah.
Do you have future political aspirations?
Going to the front line.
The search for survivors.
How does this war end?
And getting to the heart of the story.
Thank you for being here. We'll be here for the long run.
ABC News, #1 in the morning, the #1 newscast, #1 in daytime talk, Friday nights, Sunday mornings versus the competition, and the #1 streaming news. Thank you for making ABC News America's trusted, straightforward first choice.
First thing in the morning.
There's a lot going on. Everybody in that home is okay.
To catch you up with what happened overnight. We are here at fashion's biggest night out.
What's happening today? YouTube has unveiled a new set of policies.
What people are talking about. The new ad campaign.
Fast, straightforward.
With some fun in between.
A real-life Barbie dream house.
A name change for the Wienermobile.
First thing in the morning.
America This Morning.
America's #1 early morning news.
On ABC News Live.
When I got sent to Idaho to cover the murders of 4 college students, it was a story that didn't make any sense. 4 students stabbed to death in their beds while 2 roommates were home.
You gotta think to yourself, okay, who's the target and how many people would a man go through to get to his target?
I'm Kayna Whitworth with ABC News. This is the story of savage murders, a determined small-town police force, and a scholar of crime. This is the King Road Killings. The full series is out now. Listen to every episode wherever you get your podcasts.
Get ready, America, every Friday. The hottest trends, styles, and must-have. What's the right stuff to buy right now? I really love that. It's time to buy the right stuff. Yes! And save big time, too. The right stuff. Fridays on GMA. You're going to love it.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Live reporting, breaking news, exclusives, award-winning, powerful, eye-opening. ABC News Live Prime with Lindsay Davis, streaming weeknights.
And welcome back. Great white sharks are congregating at a popular summer destination. And a pilot is accused of trying to fly a plane while intoxicated. And how you can get a lifetime of free subs. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
A great white warning. A new study shows there may be more of these jaws swimming around Cape Cod than any of us thought. In fact, the waters off the coast of Massachusetts are one of the largest great white hotspots in the world. In the study, researchers counted about 800 great white sharks visiting the region from 2015 to 2018, finding the number increased over the years. Just this week, a Cape Cod beach was closed after lifeguards spotted a great white. The tracking app Sharktivity showing more than a dozen white shark sightings. And it's no wonder why. Late summer and early fall are the busiest times for sharks in the area, when water temperatures are warmest.
A United Airlines pilot pulled from a flight and given a suspended prison sentence after allegedly showing up for work intoxicated. French media reporting that pilot was supposed to fly from Paris to Washington, D.C. Sunday. Reports say the pilot claimed he had 2 glasses of wine the night before, but his alcohol level was 3 times legal limit for pilots in Europe. That pilot was fined, given a 6-month suspended prison sentence, and had his pilot's license suspended for a year.
A body has been recovered in the aftermath of a boating accident on Lake Michigan. Authorities said the boat, which had 7 passengers on it, crashed into a break wall and overturned near Navy Pier in Chicago early Friday morning. 6 passengers were rescued and reportedly hospitalized. Officials said they had continued to search for the missing 7th passenger before a body was recovered in the area of the accident. The cause of the accident is under investigation.
Anybody operating a boat, you need to know your navigational hazards. If you're operating any kind of a vessel out here in Lake Michigan, know your capabilities.
Another major crane collapse this week, this time in Maryland. That crane fell Friday morning across I-70 near Hagerstown, Maryland. That crane blocked all 3 eastbound lanes and closed the highway for several hours. State police telling WJLA-TV they took the crane operator to the hospital for treatment. Then one vehicle crashed into the crane after it landed on the highway, although the occupants were not hurt. They're still investigating what went wrong. Taylor Swift's wildly popular Eras Tour has shaken things up in more ways than one. Reports say the singer's 2 performances in Seattle last weekend generated actual seismic activity. Fans dancing so hard they allegedly triggered magnitude 2.3 earthquakes each night, now appropriately dubbed Swiftquakes. Taylor Swift ends her U.S. leg of the tour with a few dates in California. Whether those shows generate any more mini-quakes remains to be seen.
For major fans of Subway sandwiches, a lifetime of free subs may be as easy as changing your name. As part of a new contest from the sandwich chain, fans will have between August 1st and 4th to enter the contest for free subs for life if they commit to legally changing their first name to Subway. One lucky winner will not only get the free subs for life, but will also be reimbursed for the legal and processing costs of changing their name. No matter who ends up winning, it's safe to assume it will be someone clearly devoted to Subway sandwiches.
And also this evening, the Emmys have been postponed as SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild members strike at the same time, demanding actionable change, things like better pay. But many say that Hollywood's core issues go way beyond just money. Maureen Mo Ryan's new book, Burn It Down: Power, Complicity, and a Call for Change in Hollywood dives into stories of harassment and bias in Hollywood and what needs to be done to change Hollywood's future. Mo, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And of course, as you know, your book comes at a time when we're experiencing this. Actors and writers, they're striking together for the first time since 1960. So how has the industry come to this point where you have so many people at the same time saying enough is enough?
I think that what we really are seeing is the changes wrought by the streaming revolution. So about a decade ago, almost exactly, Orange is the New Black, House of Cards premiered. Those shows were among the vanguard of shows changing the game. So there were many good things about this revolution: who got to tell stories, who was the stars of these shows, that sort of thing. There were many more people who got opportunities. The problem came with compensation and how the compensation would work out. If I had to boil it down, I would say that people who shared somewhat meaningfully in the piece of the pie, they got a piece of the pie when shows were successful or when films were successful. That has gone away for many people, and that's what the strike is about.
Absolutely. You're talking, of course, about these residuals. There's also issues with AI on that front. But there also are these underlying issues that you write about as well. You say, don't deploy solutions at the wrong time when it comes to allegations about sexually abusive behavior. What are the ways that Hollywood has done this as well?
Hollywood has frankly put people in positions of responsibility that have had no training for that. And it has also taken this word creativity and put a lot of things under that banner that don't belong there. Abusing people, hitting them, assaulting them. That is nothing to do with creativity, and any first-rate artist would tell you that. Any storyteller would tell you that. But the industry has done no training. You know, in many industries that you go into, if you want to be put into a position of department head, manager, you're managing dozens or hundreds of people, you would get support, resources, not just training, but guardrails on your behavior and meaningful reporting systems for reporting anything that goes wrong for employees. Hollywood has not meaningfully had those things at all.
Right, you're almost talking about a learned behavior. And you touched on a word that I think is so important, is something that you write about. We need to unpack it a little bit more, I think: creativity. You've said that there's this expectation that creativity involves physical, mental, financial abuse. How do you really feel that that abuse has, become normalized under the means of creativity?
It's an easy out. I mean, that's the easiest way to say it, is that people don't want to say, we are allowing this star or this producer to act this way because we think that this person can make money for us. That feels like an impolite and gross thing to say. So people don't want to say that. They want to have a cover, a scrim, if you will, of like, well, this person has to behave in this fashion or else they cannot access their creative impulses. And that's just nonsense.
And let's talk for a moment just about the monetary impacts here of this strike. The TV and the filmmaking, it's a business at the end of the day, right? These companies are expected to bring in huge profits to their shareholders. They have to also play hardball. They have to trim the costs where possible, even if it means, hurting some of the industry workers. But they have to increase these profits. They have to then invest in the next TV show or film. They say they've brought historic offers to those who are striking. What is your response to that and the industry's responsibility?
I think that the people that I know, the thousands of people I've talked to in the industry, they really want to work. They want to work hard, and they're not greedy, frankly. In 2021, David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, in 1 year, he made $246 million. It's very hard to be a working actor or a jobbing director or a writer going from project to project, studio to studio, and have people say, well, we cannot meet your demands for meaningful residuals, meaningful raises in pay. They don't find these offers acceptable.
We're at a huge disparity in those numbers, of course. Mo, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time tonight. And you can check out her book, Burn It Down, Power, Complicity, and a Call for Change in Hollywood. It's out right now, wherever books are sold. In this extreme heat, it doesn't take long to burn outside, which makes putting that sunscreen on and then reapplying it more important than ever. But there is a critical number that you should be looking at to make sure you're getting the protection you need. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
In the sea of sunscreen options, there are a range of SPFs, but there is another important number you should be looking for.
It's very important to check the expiration date when you're buying it. It's not something that we're used to. We're used to checking the front of the bottle, SPF 30, UVA-B, UVA, broad spectrum, water resistant, but we're not used to checking the back of the bottle.
The FDA says sunscreen usually expires 3 years after it's manufactured, sometimes even less, because it can physically change and chemicals can break down, potentially making it less effective.
Sunscreen that's kept in a hot car or in a glove compartment will degrade faster than sunscreen that's kept in a cool, dry place. So if you're at the pool or you're on the beach, you want to keep your sunscreen in the cooler or in the shade.
To find out if any poolgoers were using expired sunscreen, GMA hit the Summit Family Aquatic Center in Summit, New Jersey with Dr. Mark Abdumalik, dermatologist and ABC News contributor.
This one is expired. You got to get a new one, buddy. We have an expired sunscreen here.
I'm going to say early 2022, maybe?
No, it's even older than that.
Oh, man.
This poolgoer sunscreen expired nearly 3 years ago.
I actually thought it'd be worse than that.
But at least one person we talked to is keeping a close eye on that date.
I even write the date on it, so I know.
Wow. So she wrote the date that you bought it.
5 out of the 10 groups we talked to had at least one expired sunscreen. And that expired sunscreen isn't just at the pool. We also hit stores to see what is on the shelves. 24 stores total in Texas, New Jersey, and New York. We found 16 bottles of expired sunscreen, 14 of those bottles from various CVS locations and 2 at a Walgreens. The oldest we found expired in April 2022.
If you go to a store and it's already expired, and that means it's been sitting in a shelf or a warehouse for probably at least 3 years, if not more. So that sunscreen really isn't providing you with the protection in a guaranteed way that the bottle says.
CVS and Walgreens both told us they have procedures in place to check for expired sunscreen. CVS says any unintentional deviations from this policy that are brought to our attention are quickly rectified. And Walgreens tells us after learning of the situation, we instructed all stores to check the expiration dates of all sun care products and to ensure there is no expired sunscreen on our shelves.
Our Eva Pilgrim, our thanks to you. Also, to make sure that your sunscreen is protecting you as promised on the label, the FDA says don't use it past that expiration date, or if you bought it in general more than 3 years ago. So that is good advice. Also, we are nearing the end of Disability Pride Month, and we're highlighting all of those who've made an impact in educating on disability awareness. Eddie Ndopo is a Nambian disability rights global advocate who was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy at age 2. He was told by doctors he wouldn't survive past 5 years old. Well, you see him there. He's now 32 years old. He is not just surviving here, he is thriving. And our Phil Lipoff sat down with the activist and advocate to discuss his inspiring journey and his new book, Sipping Dom Perignon Through a Straw.
Let's talk about the title, because the title is a clever way to say, hey, this is what I'm about to get into. It's Sipping Dom Perignon Through a Straw. Did you start with the title and then write the book, or did you write the book and find the title?
The title sort of shaped the text. I have always felt that the way we have a conversation about accessibility feels very limited. What makes a space accessible is really the belonging and the dignity and the self-actualization that we all feel, regardless of ability or identity, once we're in that space. This ambition of inclusion that goes beyond the bare minimum, that goes beyond compliance. And sipping Dom Perignon through a straw felt like equal parts cheeky and incisive in terms of being able to articulate a vision of the world where I can have more.
You've defied the odds at every step, but talk about the diagnosis, if you will, just so we can understand it.
Sure. So I was diagnosed at the age of 2 with spinal muscular atrophy, which is a motor neuron condition that affects the voluntary muscles and results in progressive weakness. So the older I get, the weaker I become. And I have, I've stopped counting at this point, but I've outlived myself by, I think, 26, 27 years. Existential defiance, as my brother calls it.
You discussed how lonely you felt and how a kid can't really, how do you articulate you're lonely? So take me through that process.
Yeah, I didn't really have the language to be able to articulate that sense of not feeling stimulated. You know, I was in the company of a nanny growing up, and my mom, a fearless single mother, was at work, and my younger brother was at school, preschool, kindergarten. And I just knew from hearing Wonga, my younger brother, talk about his days at school that I was missing that connection with other children. And I think that it wasn't so much about the day-to-day activities and, you know, sort of the minutia of the classroom than it was really the ability to be able to meet other kids and really build that ability to interact and develop those interpersonal skills. I held my mom's hand and I just said to her, I want to be like Wonga. I want to go to school.
So tell me what your mother said and how supportive she was.
You need to remember at the time I came of age in the late 90s in Namibia, Southern Africa, and there weren't any children with disabilities like me in school. I was literally one of probably a handful in the entire country to be enrolled into a mainstream education. But she said yes, and she hit the pavement and she knocked on every door that she could and got a lot of no's, and it took one yes from a school on the outskirts of town, and they're like, we're not sure if this can happen, but let's give it a go.
Fast forward, you wind up at Oxford. I'm wondering, during the schooling, at what point the kids around you, your age, whatever age it was, did it just become second nature?
I was a beneficiary of inclusive education, but I think the folks who benefited the most probably were my non-disabled counterparts. I think that the kids that I grew up with became masters at being able to navigate inclusion in such a natural way And I think that that's the gift when we have an inclusive classroom. The benefit isn't just for the person who's included, but it's for everybody else. We're all transformed and we're all changed when we're able to validate one another and recognize that we're all deeply and fundamentally human.
You talk about taking your shot through the UN. You're going to be the first disabled person to travel into space. When did you start envisioning yourself in space, or was that just an opportunity?
Space to me was this metaphor. It was this giant stage where if I could say one thing to humanity, a 20-minute speech, what would I say? Because I became the first person with a disability in history to deliver a keynote address to the United Nations high-level political forum.
As I take this podium, I do so with a profound sense of responsibility. I am not just a voice for the disabled, but a catalyst for change.
And it was truly an out-of-body experience, and I really felt that in some ways I was a representative for the community that I'm a part of, for the 1.3 billion disabled people in the world. I'm a bit of a daredevil and somewhat of a free spirit, and so anything that enables me to express myself fully, I go after.
What do you want people to take away from this, both people within the disabled community and maybe even so more importantly, outside of it?
This is really a memoir that critically examines one's relationship with one's body and how that body interfaces with society. I think, you know, my intention was to really be as honest and vulnerable as possible about the human condition. I think that ableism can dehumanize people with disabilities because ableism says there's only one way of being productive, one way of being valuable, one way of being beautiful, one way of being useful. And so my intention for this book is really to say that there are no limits, that we can pursue the greatest, most extraordinary lives that we can pursue, and that it's our job as people to support one another in that endeavor.
What an incredibly inspiring interview, and our thanks to Phil Lipoff for that. Eddie's book, Sipping Dom Perignon Through a Straw, is out wherever books are sold on August 1st. And that's our show for tonight. I'm Kana Whitworth. ABC News Live is here for you all night with the latest news, context, and analysis. And of course, you can always find us on Hulu, Roku, the ABC News app, and of course on abcnews.com.
This is ABC News Live Prime.
Thanks so much.